USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the Game of the Week podcast for Thursday, October 24th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Jim Connelly. And Jim, this week's matchup has Northeastern traveling for a pair of games at St. Cloud State.
And joining us on the Game of the Week podcast, the head coach of Northeastern University, Jim Madigan, his team traveling out to St. Cloud State this week. And Jim, thanks for joining us. I was just saying off the air, this is 2 weeks in a row I've talked to you. It usually means you're playing hockey when we're talking this often this early in the season.
Yeah, no, Jim, I like that. And as I said, I hope maybe we can schedule something from 2 weeks from now, so that means we're continuing playing good hockey.
It's good to get out of the gate. I think any team likes that. But I look at your numbers and your defense in 4 games, 5 goals allowed. I know that goaltending plays a role in that. I know the team defense plays a role in that. But what have you liked back there that, and especially performance-wise, what has been working that has kept the puck out of the net?
One thing that we really like early, and you just touched on, Jim, is team defense. Our team defense has been very good, and we've got 4 freshman defensemen in the lineup. We have a grad transfer goaltender, and they've all been very, very good. Our 3 returning defensemen, and Shea, of course, is our captain, and Harrison Kislin have elevated their game, and our forwards have, obviously that's a big part of it. They've been really bought in. So, early this year, our defensive structure, we're really happy with where we are a month into it. And in those 4 games we've played, that hasn't been the issue. The issue has been more, in the offensive zone, just trying to create some offense and mostly creating some offense off of our forecheck, which we haven't been able to do consistently. But our team defense has been very good. Now, you're right. You can always point to your goaltender, and Craig Pantano has been really good. He's made a quick transition to our program. He's given our team confidence. I think we've given him some confidence, and there's a good relationship there between Craig and our young defensemen and our group as a whole in our defensive zone.
Let's talk a little bit about Craig Pantano, and obviously losing a phenomenal goaltender in Caden Primo last year to the pro ranks. Then you find out that you might have an opportunity to pick up a graduate transfer from your own league, from Merrimack College. Take us through the process a little bit on that. And, I've heard some coaches, the purists say, boy, this is like having free agency in college hockey. Some coaches love it. Obviously, you've benefited here, a couple of transfers in one season. But, how does it work for you, and how do you kind of look at the process right now as kind of the potential to have some sort of a free agency?
Yeah, and we can debate, the grad transfer rule, from now until for the next 2-3 days. And football, it's been with football and basketball for a while, and we tend to, as in our sport, hockey, follow football, whether the rule was in place back then, but we followed in terms of trends, right? And so we were probably a little bit later to the trend than, say, football and basketball. And I'm not going to debate the rule. The rule is the rule's the rule. So you'll work with the rules, and for us, we want to be philosophically for our program, we want to be strategic and targeted if we're going to recruit a grad transfer student athlete, whether he's completed 4 years with a year of eligibility, whether he's graduated in 3 years and still has a year of eligibility. We want to make sure it's a good fit for our program. And so, to your point, we lost Caden Primo. We knew we were going to lose Caden Primo right around the Beanpot time in February. We started to identify some goaltenders outside. And then in early March, when Merrimack season was over, Craig's name was on the portal, which is an NCAA, area where you can go, and when players decide to put themselves on the portal, that means they're looking for opportunities. They can still stay within their own institution or looking at other institutions. So when he was on the portal, he was free to be able to be contacted, and we did. And we had known the goaltender. We recruited him a little bit when he was coming out of junior and high school, and it was a good fit for us. And it was a great fit because we knew we were going to have a younger team and younger defensemen. And the nice part now that I look at it, with Craig being with us for 2 months almost, is Craig Pantano is just going to be Craig Pantano. He's mature. He's comfortable in his own skin. He's not trying to be Caden Primo. He played against Caden Primo the last 2 years. You know how good Caden Primo was, but he knows that he's a good goaltender, and he's mature in his skin to know who he is as a goalie and just be himself. And by doing that, he's been very, very good. And as you said, he's only given up the 5 goals in the 4 games.
Well, we'll say talking about defensive position, but the offensive side of it, Jordan Harris. I saw his goal last Tuesday night against UMass. Was one of it was as nice as they come in a penalty shot situation, and then 4 points at this point. I know it's not exactly gangbusters, 4 points in 4 games, but he's got the co-lead in scoring on your team, and that's a blue liner who obviously likes to jump into the play.
Yeah, he's has tremendous feet, Jim. Great skating ability. He's an NHL skater, and he's a smart player. And his skating abilities allow him to get involved in the rush. And we want our defensemen to be active in the rush. We'd like to see him more supporting, not him, but all of our defensemen supporting the rush versus leading the rush. But we've got some skill back there on the back end, and Jordan has some, and he's been good. But more importantly for me, he's been good in his own zone, and that's where where we need him to be good. That's where he needs to be good, along with our other 6 defensemen who play, because we're dressing 7 every game, for them to continue growing and developing into good defensemen, both at our level and the level that they want to reach ultimately. So it's taking care of your own zone, and he's been good that way. And hey, we have no problem. If you look at our program, it's not so much no problem. We have a little bit of history of defensemen being pretty good in our program and being up in the top of the scoring. Obviously, Davies led our team last year in scoring. The year before that, he was up there with the 3 big boys, and we're happy for Jordan, because we want him to contribute some offensively, and we're going to need some offensive contributions from the back end this year. But we need it to be at the right, done the right way too, And he got the penalty shot, Jim, because he jumped up in a play in a 2-on-1 with Madden. Madden made a great play, and he got pulled down. So the way he jumped up in the play is the way we need him to play in all our defensemen.
We're talking with Northeastern head coach Jim Madigan, his team, traveling out to St. Cloud for a pair of games, the USCHO.com game of the week for this week. I know it's kind of one of those questions that a coach has to ponder all the time, but scoring is obviously something that's going to have to increase. Defense can only carry you for so long. Where do you feel those goals can come from? Where's the areas of improvement that are still out there for your team?
Well, hey, we've got 2 center icemen, who offensively are pretty gifted, in Zach Solo and Tyler Matt. Solo had 15 goals last year in this league as a sophomore. Madden had 12 and 30 points, and missed a few games obviously because of the World Junior Tournament. So it starts with those 2 offensively, and then down the middle we're strong. The forward center iceman in Picking, who's been with us. This is his senior year and has been very good. And Biagio Lorario, is a player that, gives us some versatility and flexibility. So, we're strong through the middle. That's where you want to be strong through. And then, on the flanks, we're looking at, Brandon Van Riemsdyk, who's a grad transfer who had 10 goals in Hockey East last year. And, Grant Josephik, who had 10 goals last year in Hockey East, another winger, and Aiden McDonough, who's a winger, who's a draft choice by Vancouver. We anticipate him scoring some goals, and I think we've got about 5 or 6 other guys who can get you 7 to 10 goals. So the offense will be spread out, similar to the way it was last year. I think everyone last year wondered where our goals were going to come from, and at the end of the day, we had those. We didn't have the big line, but we had enough guys spread out who contributed. And then I anticipate us, being able to, generate a little bit more offense on the back end and being involved in the offensive play. All 7 defensemen that are in the lineup right now can contribute, and the ones who aren't in the lineup on the back end have offensive skills. So it'll be spread out. I don't know if we're going to score as much as last year. I said that last year, and we didn't, but we were still second in the league in scoring, and second in the league in goals against. So I think if we can create that balance again this year, and being in the top 4 in both areas, I think that will bode well for us and put us in the top part of the league.
After this coming weekend with St. Cloud, you'll have a big part of your non-conference schedule out of the way. Of course, there are always a couple for the Bean Pot in the early part of next year, but you've got a couple of games coming up that I'm sure everybody's pretty excited about, and that is New Hampshire and then either Colgate or Princeton at the Friendship 4 in Belfast coming up after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I know. We're looking, we're not looking beyond the next 4 weeks, but our kids are excited about that trip and what it'll bring. We were there 4 years ago in 2015, and we went there as a team that struggled, and Jim might have been there. We lost to Lowell in the first night there, and overtime, played a real good game, and then won the second night over Colgate, and brought our team together. And we've been struggling. We came back to Boston as a better group. We didn't necessarily win right away, but we played a lot better that allowed us to win. So this trip is it's a business trip. First and foremost, there's league points at stake, and then there's points, non-conference points, and pairwise points available in both nights, and then it's the ability to grow together and to see a different part of the world, and to be in a city where the people are very, very hospitable, nice. There's a texture to the people in Northern Ireland, and the last time we went, we couldn't have been treated any nicer, and we're looking forward to the same opportunity this year for our young men to grow and to see, as I said, different part of the world, and to come together continue coming together as a team.
Before you take that long flight over to Ireland, actually not ridiculously long, we've both been on the flight before, but you're going to head out to St. Cloud this week. This is a team that has not played a lot. They've just had one series at Bemidji. That's a few weeks ago. They've been off last week. But what do you expect from them? Is it too early to even kind of understand your opponent and you just have to focus on yourself? Or do you have some feeling for some tendencies, some things that you're going to have to be concerned about throughout the weekend?
Well, first and foremost, they've got a winning culture, right? They've had a tremendous program over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, they've been very good for many years, but over those last 5, 6, 7 years, they've been 30 wins last year. The year before, they were, I think, at 30. And Coach Larson was there as an assistant, and then last year as the head coach, and with Coach Moscow. And they've got a winning culture there. They've got players who know how to win. So we graduated. Had some NHL losses last year. They had some graduation losses and some players lose to early NHL signings, but they still have a lot of good players there, and they have a winning culture that it's passed down from class to class. So we know first and foremost that's what they have, and then they've got good players. I mean, we've watched them a little bit on tape. Obviously, they've watched us on tape. They play the game fast. They pressure the puck really well and hard. It's a 200 by 100 sheet. It's an Olympic sheet. They know how to play on that sheet really well. They have a team that is designed to play on that Olympic sheet, and they're fast, and they're quick in transition, and they're good in their own zone. They've got good goaltending. They've got a junior goaltender. So, if you look at their record, they've been pretty good at home. I don't think they lost last year. In fact, I know they didn't lose at home last year. And they've been really good at home for the last few years. So, it's going to be a challenge for us. It's, the Battle of the Huskies. We have Battle of the Huskies within our own league, and now we'll take the Battle of the Huskies outside to a non-conference opponent, and we know that we're going to have to be really, really good to win this weekend. But as I said earlier, when you play those types of teams, those non-conference teams, and those teams that are really good, it gets your guys' attention. And I know our guys will have purpose and focus playing on Friday and Saturday night this weekend.
Well, it certainly should be a good test, and one of the many tests you'll face here in the next month. But Jim Madigan, best of luck, safe travels, and thanks for taking the time. We'll hopefully catch up with you very soon.
I'm hoping we can schedule something in 2 more weeks from now, James.
That's Northeastern head coach Jim Madigan. More of the USCHO Game of the Week podcast coming up.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast for October 24th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly. Jim, why don't we start right in with the game we were just talking about with Jim Madigan. Number 11 Northeastern at number 14 St. Cloud in a series that has huge postseason implications.
It certainly could. Obviously these are two teams that have been at the top of their conferences for the last few years. They've been playing well. They've been NCAA tournament teams, and they're both, putting together schedules here at the beginning of their season that are highly competitive. After Northeastern finishes this weekend, they're going to just go and play the defending national runner-up, UMass, for the second and third time in a span of 3 weeks. So there's been some pretty competitive hockey there in St. Cloud. Their schedule is never a slouch no matter what. So I think that this is a very good weekend, a good test for Northeastern. It's a very good test for St. Cloud, which ended up with 2 ties to start the season against Bemidji. Now they'll go back to home ice and see if they can get some of that magic that Jim Madigan talked about, the fact that they didn't lose a game on home ice last year.
Next, we have number 8, Minnesota Duluth, with a home-and-home series against number 20, Minnesota. I think this one's really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, Minnesota Duluth 1-3. They got swept last weekend by Wisconsin. They've got to be a little bit surly, as I've heard it described. Meanwhile, in Dinkytown, the talk is that the Gophers football team is higher ranked than the Gophers hockey team, which almost never happens.
Well, I mean, that part is fluky, but I don't think that this hockey team is anything to sleep on. They're going to be a pretty good team, I think, this year under Bob Motzko. And Duluth, they're trying to kind of find their legs. A couple of two very difficult series. Let's not kid ourselves to open the season for the defending national champs, but I think that you'll get the battle. I think this was a great battle last year. They played a home and home to open the series last year. This week it's 3 weeks in, and it's going to be a battle. These guys still feel the rivalry between them. Minnesota, I think, maybe is starting to get that little brother feel to it. Believe it or not, when you watch your in-state rival, or at least an in-state opponent, win 2 national championships when you're supposed to be the team competing for national championships, I think there's probably a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of the Gophers, and that could be what makes this an interesting series. Don't be surprised to see a few extra penalties in this series. I haven't seen Duluth a couple of weeks ago. I know that they don't back down from any physical play, and I think that Minnesota they might be ready to get a few hits in there as well.
This should be a good series coming up. Number 13, Clarkson at number 6, Wisconsin. Casey Jones has had a terrific schedule for his Golden Knights. They had a couple of games at Michigan. They had Providence and Vermont come in last weekend. And now a pair at the high-flying Wisconsin Badgers.
Yeah, what a test that Clarkson has gone through early here in the season. And Wisconsin will be a great test for them. And that is, the fact that it's out in Madison, give the first advantage to the Badgers. But they're going to have to make sure that they show up, because they're facing a team. This isn't like playing Minnesota Duluth, where you're playing the 2-time defending national champion. You're playing an old rival. This is a Clarkson team that, half the fans in Madison probably have no clue anything about them. They're more familiar with their women's team than their men. So if Wisconsin sleeps on Clarkson, they'll get run over, because this is a talented Clarkson team. They play hard. They play to win. This is an interesting series, as you mentioned. I'm watching this one closely because I want to see that Wisconsin can come out and play tough every single night.
A single game in Hockey East coming up on Friday, early season matchup. Number 7, Providence at number 10, BC. And
BC's looking to rebound after a couple of losses out at Denver last week. I mean, you're playing the number 1 team in the country. Those aren't exactly considered bad losses. Providence, they've had their highs and lows. They've been very high at times. And last week, obviously, a great trip to the North Country. Prior to that, a home loss against Holy Cross. So there's a lot going on early season for both of these teams. I think they're both solid. They're both going to be at the top 4 come the end of the season in Hockey East. But this is a good battle, good test. And, the fact that it's at Boston College should matter a little. I'm not sure that they have the home ice advantage as some other teams in the league or maybe in the country. But this is still, kind of one of those that both teams are probably looking at this as, we really need this game early in the season.
A little bit of a Western Massachusetts battle between American International, last year's Cinderella team and the top team in Atlantic hockey, versus the national runner-ups, number 3 UMass, a team that, Jim, you suggest may be better than people are thinking.
Well, I think I've heard a lot of people talk about UMass being a little overrated at 3. I think they're pretty good. I think that they've got a lot of components, and they're even battling, a couple of injuries here early in the season. So I think that they're going to be an excellent team. I think 3 is the appropriate rank for them. I think that they're that good. But, we're looking at this as a big game, AIC and UMass, and we're only 4 years removed probably from this being a game nobody even wants to see. Where AIC was at the bottom of Atlantic hockey and UMass was at the bottom of Hockey East. So what a great progress for these two schools that gets to be shown on the big stage at the Mullins Center on Saturday night. They're pretty local rivals. They're separated by only, about 15 to 20 minutes in driving time. So I don't know that the two schools feel the rivalry or feel anything for each other, but in terms of what the product on the ice will be, I think it'll be a pretty good product.
Let's take a quick look at some rivalry games coming up. A pair of games at Alaska Anchorage as Alaska comes in. I hope these two teams can stay two teams for the long term. But what does this matchup mean for these two schools in Alaska?
Well, it's always been a bit of a battle when these two teams play. I am hoping that this is not kind of the precursor to the end. That these two schools can survive a lot longer, but there's a lot of concern over funding and where the money's going to come from to keep these programs going. Also, the potential that they might be homeless in a couple of years when the teams break off from the WCHA that we've been talking about really since the summertime. So, I'm not sure how competitive the game will be on the ice. I feel like no matter what the ability of these two teams, they get up to play each other, and that makes the series that much better. But it should be good hockey. Let's hope that this is just the start of continuous rivalries between these two clubs.
An interesting in-state matchup. Only 3 Division I schools in hockey in the state of Pennsylvania. 2 of them play. Robert Morris is at number 12, Penn State. And if past experience is any indication, new goaltender, graduate transfer Justin Kapelmaster for Robert Morris is probably going to have to make about 40 saves if the Colonials are going to win.
Yeah, that's nothing I think that any Derek Schooley coach team fears. They're used to seeing teams put up a lot of shots, but they've usually had good goaltending. And don't forget, Penn State's coming off a really strange series where they win 7-0 one night, they lose 4-0 the next night. So they're going to have some concerns of their own. If they fall behind in that game and start chasing the game, some doubts certainly will creep into the minds. But at the same time, if you're Derek Schooley and Bobby Moe here, you know that you can absolutely not chase the game. Playing from behind is losing hockey when you're playing a team like Penn State.
And going back to the early days in Atlantic hockey for these two schools, it's been a pretty good rivalry. RIT and Air Force, they were dominant in the league the first 4 or 5 years they joined. That rivalry continues, but it's always a tough place to play at the Air Force Academy at 7,000 feet above sea level. It's a young Air Force team that has had no success so far. RIT 3-1 in non-conference play, and 4 of the 10 goals scored by the Tigers so far have come from freshmen. This could be a weekend where RIT maybe changes the momentum in the series played out at Air Force and maybe comes away with a few points.
Yeah, they better bring their oxygen tanks because it is very difficult to play at a high altitude. 7,000 feet is really one that can kind of get to you. But anyways, I do think that this is a good series. It always has been when these two teams play. Air Force, they're kind of looking for some success. They haven't had a lot right out of the gate here. Getting swept by Arizona State last week was not anything that Frank Servatore would want. So I think they're looking at this as a weekend to maybe turn things around, get some early points in the Atlantic hockey standings.
Well, Jim, we have 3 podcasts every week, including this game of the week at the end of the week. At the end of the weekend, check out how our prognostications and analysis went on the USCHO Weekend Review podcast, and midweek USCHO Spotlight, where we get to spend a little bit more time with a coach or player or administrator or a journalist who covers the sport. Check them all out at uscho.com/podcasts. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.